It traveled light years through space to find intelligent life.
What is the greatest or biggest surprise that you experienced after making the film?
It's quite a long process making an animated feature. This one was about 3 years altogether, but a year and a half of actual filming. And I think right at the end of it, obviously having gone through it all and it being quite a lot of pressure, it was really lovely to have a little break. And then we went to a festival in Italy, and it was our first experience of seeing a real audience watch the film. They watched a clip of it, but what made it really special was that this festival is just for children, and there were 1,200 of them in a cinema. So we were sat at the front doing a little talk, and then we played the clips, and we just got this amazing direct feedback from 1,200 Italian kids. So yeah, that was memorable. And then right at the end, there was a Q&A, and that was all translated from Italian. So we had the organisers of the festival were translating it into English. One little boy said that we designed the alien wrong because he had seen one in real life and it didn't look like that.
Wow, okay.
So that was good.
Wow. Did he describe what that alien looked like to him?
No,
he didn't.
Sadly not. No, we didn't. We should have pursued it, but he was very sure that he'd seen one. So that was quite interesting.
Wow, just like the villain, the character that experienced an alien and
exactly.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
One of my favorite scenes was when the sheep met Lula at the farm. What was your favorite scene to shoot?
Ooh, it's a good question because they're all so different. I've got different memories. Some of them are really complicated. So when we're filming, a big action sequence, for example, in the underground base, that's a really complicated sequence to do. But I think probably one of my favorite scenes was the supermarket, because it was just crazy sort of fun all the way through. We had 2 animators and they spent the entire production shooting that one scene. So we had about 20 animators all together on the film, and 2 of them just spent the whole year or just over a year working on that sequence. And in the end of that sequence, obviously the whole supermarket gets destroyed. So we had to eventually shoot it all in order and then destroy the whole thing, as Lula does.
Wow. And your answer kind of eased way to my next question, which is you probably faced some challenges during the making of this film. Could you talk about which scene was the most challenging and why?
Yeah, I should say as well that I directed this film with someone else called Rich Phelan. And so together we worked on the story and the storyboards. And then when it came to shooting, we broke the whole film into sort of separate sequences, and we split that pretty much in half. So from my side, the sequences I shot, one of the most complex things altogether is the fact there's no dialogue. I think that's the thing that makes it really tough. So we spend ages trying to get the story working in storyboards. And there are so many scenes where we just really had to work out so many different ways to get across the story and the plot. It's sort of complicated compared to the first film because so much is happening. So much involves like understanding what Lula's thinking and where she's come from and why she's lost. So I think those scenes with her and Shaun at the beginning were really tricky to try and figure out how much we could show the audience without words.
What was your experience working with the screenwriters, Mark Burton and John Brown, on this film?
Yeah. Well, I worked a lot closer with Mark actually than John. John was involved early on, and I mean Mark was the co-writer and co-director of the first Shaun film with Richard Starzak, and so I worked with Mark quite a lot over the years. I was one of the lead animators on the first film, so he directed me on that, and I'd worked with him in the capacity of being directed by him. And he's just a great enthusiastic presence in the room. So he's, he really champions the craft of story, and we were very rigorous when we had our meetings, about making sure it all locked together and was genuine. So I loved working with him, and it really is all the way through the process. We don't lock the script entirely and then shoot it. It evolves quite heavily. So at every stage during production, we'd be having these meetings and making changes to try and make the film better all the way through.
And this film had some Easter eggs and references to other films. Were there any other references or Easter eggs you wanted to put in the film that didn't make the cut?
Oh yeah, I mean there were quite a few ideas we had around that films Rich and I watched when we were growing up. So we both grew up in the 80s, and we had lots of things like Rich loved RoboCop, which does make a sort of appearance in terms of influencing the design of the robot at the end. And I love Back to the Future, and there were certain things I tried to get in from Back to the Future, but we didn't want to just push things in if they didn't make sense to be in there. So most of the references have either they make sense in the scene, but they're funny. And there are references to other films as well, like Planes, Trains and Automobiles. There's Modern Times. And yeah, there's so many references. So on the whole, they went in. We couldn't do any Star Wars because of Disney being so big.
And who were your mentors, or what books and film helped you as you pursue your dream in the industry?
Oh wow, yeah. I got excited about animation when I was a kid, doing it as a hobby at home and trying to learn as much as possible. And to be honest, I've always looked to Aardman Animations for inspiration and advice. So really, I'd say a lot of my learning has come from being there and writing and talking to people like Nick Park and Richard Starzak, who created the Shaun that we see now. I loved going to college because it was just a great environment to sort of practice and learn around other artists. But I'd say most of my knowledge, and I'm far from knowing everything, has come from people like Nick Park. And Nick is someone I've always looked up to. I mean, he's very good at design, but also ideas and comedy and timing and animation. So he's a great sort of role model to have.
Okay, my next question is, you're going to use one word to describe each of these individuals that were involved in the film. The first person is Richard Felon.
Oh yeah, brilliant.
Justin Fletcher.
Enthusiastic.
John Sparks.
Right. What I mean is, he's incredibly funny, but in a very sort of dry Welsh way.
Amalia Vitali, I'm missing.
Yeah. Inspiring.
Okay. So congratulations on your Oscar nomination for Best Animated Feature Film. Where were you when you discovered you and your mates got nominated?
Wow, I was in the Aardman studio, and I was actually animating Shaun at the time in a very big unit, all on my own because of COVID restrictions. and I had an email that just popped up, and I didn't really know what to do because we can't go around high-fiving and hugging and stuff. So I had quite a sort of, a quiet celebration, I suppose. And then a few hours later, I met up with Rich, who's also at Aardman in the studio, and we went for a wander, went for a walk to celebrate.
And if you win, who would you thank first?
Well, I mean, I've got to say, I'm amazed that we got nominated. We're definitely the underdog, or the under sheep, I like to think, because the films we're up against are incredible. If we did win, I would have to thank Richard Starzak, who created the character for us in the first place and came up with this idea, this concept, and then the entire crew, because it's such a team effort making a film like this. There are so many people involved in it, and so it's their award if we win.
And this film was also nominated for the 2019 BAFTA Awards. Could you talk about your experience at the ceremony?
Yeah, we were very fortunate with our timing in that we completed the film. It came out in October previously, so 2019, and or was it 2018? And we went to the cinema, and we did have a cinema premiere, which was a brilliant experience. And so when it went to the BAFTAs, sometime after it came out, it was just a star-studded, as you can imagine, star-studded affair. I've been to the Royal Albert Hall before, the venue, but I've never seen it quite so glamorous. It was just awash with people, famous people. And I guess that probably the most famous was Prince William and Princess Kate, who walked, within a metre of us.
Did you happen to talk to them or speak to them briefly?
No, but funnily enough, I have in the past, because I did a very strange performance once at BAFTA in London for a charity event, and part of it involved animating live on stage, and the volunteer we had for that was the Princess Kate. So yeah, I did meet them previously, but that was some years ago. So it's just they're amazing. They seem very down to earth, but the sort of aura and spectacle around them, because of who they are, is amazing. And they actually had to clear the red carpet. I mean, the red carpet was, as I said, it's awash with Hollywood celebrities like Scarlett Johansson and Bridget Jones, I've forgotten her name. But everyone was cleared out of the way. The entire red carpet had to be emptied for the security so that the royals could arrive. So it was just quite a moment when they walked into the Albert Hall.
And if you could write and direct a film adaptation of any novel, novella, short story, or even an article, which one would you like to do?
Oh, that's interesting. I've been thinking recently, it is something I'd love to do, and I'm working on some ideas, which I hope maybe in 10 years' time I can realise on the screen. But something I really loved as a kid was Tintin, and I think I would really like to see a stop motion version of Tintin, because I think it could look really cool. So that will be it.
And what's the best advice you have ever received about making it in the industry?
I think the best advice is advice I got very early on, when I used to write these letters to Aardman and ask them how I could become an animator. And actually, Steve Box, who was the co-director and creator of, he animated the Penguin, basically, in The Wrong Trousers, but he also worked with Nick on Curse of the Were-Rabbit. He just said the best thing I could do was practice. That's all you needed. He said, you don't have to go and do a degree, you don't have to have particular qualifications, you just need to practice the craft. And so that's the one thing that I quite often tell people now, is just to practice.
I watched your masterclass at BAU in Barcelona. And and you stated that you had a summer intern at Armin Studios making chicken wings for the film Chicken Run, which I really love that animation film. That's great. Could you talk briefly about your experience?
Yeah. As I've said, I wrote many letters, and eventually, when I was just before I went to do my degree, I got work experience. I got a letter saying, we'd like you to come in for 3 weeks, I think it was. So it's like an 3-week internship. And I arrived in the studio, and I just remember being overwhelmed by the excitement. There was such a buzz around because this was Aardman's first film, and everyone working on it seemed so enthusiastic. And it was a really big scale event. You know, there were about 200 crew there on it. And every morning, because it was shot on film, they'd wait for the rushes to come back on film from London, and they'd project them in the mini cinema there. And everyone in the crew would cram into this little room and watch them. And it was seeing, you know, everything, the tests, the shots, the takes, all the bits that had gone wrong as well as right. And I just remember, just thinking, wow, this is the best place ever. My work involved pressing, getting lumps of plasticine and pressing a mold around them to form the shape of the wings so that the animators had fresh sets of plasticine wings that they could animate. And I went back. So after I'd done that, I went back. They asked me to come back and get a paid job, which I did. So that was my summer holidays. So every summer holidays in between my degree, I'd go back down to Bristol and Aardman and work a bit on the film. And then, 2 years later, it came out, and I went to the cinema to watch it along with everyone else in the world, and I loved it. Loved it too.
Are you involved in the sequel? Because I believe there's going to be a sequel to that film.
Yes, there is a sequel. It's actually already underway. We've got a director who you've probably heard of called Sam Fell, who's worked on quite a few Aardman films, but also he co-directed Paranorman, Tales of Despero, I think. And so he's directing it, and I will be involved with it, although currently I'm working on this Shaun special for Netflix. But Chicken Run 2 is in production.
Are there any directors, living or dead, that you would like to sit down and chat with?
Loads. I would love to chat to loads of directors. Well, one would be Steven Spielberg, because, like I said, growing up in the 80s, I've sort of grown up with his type of storytelling. I love how he creates drama and suspense. So I'd love to talk to him. I'd like to sit and talk to Emerald Fennell, who's the director of The Promising Young Woman. And I'd love also to talk to, who's the other one? I mean, there's so many. There's Michael to Dr. Witt, who I love. He's an animator, 2D. A guy called, I can't believe I've forgotten his name. Oh yeah, Dexter Fletcher, who's made loads of films here, which have also been Hollywood films. Edgar Wright, I'd love to talk to him. Yeah, the list goes on.
What piece of advice do you have for aspiring animation directors starting out?
Well, the thing I learned, I guess, on this film was the importance of the storyboards and the animatic. When you make something so big, it's really vital that you can test ideas out in the animatic stage. So I would say for me, that was the one thing, having as many ideas as possible and trying them and testing them before you get to shooting, because it's really hard to change stuff once the production's underway. It's incredibly like a big machine that's rolling. You can't really stop and rethink. So that's the thing. It's like trying to get all those ideas out on paper and seeing which ones work and which ones don't.
This is my last question. In one word, how would you sum up your experience working in this animation film?
Exhilarating. Oh no, I should say out of this world, but that's not one word. That's the sort of, that's the answer. Intergalactic, something like
that. Shaun's back, but there's a new arrival in town who's a little alien. Meet Lula.
Lula. Huh.
She's a little mischievous. She's a little curious. But above all, she's a little lost.
Papa?
To get her back home, we'll take one small step for Lamb. One giant leap
Zum zum!
for Lambkind. Farmageddon, a Shaun the Sheep movie.
Oh.